South African rugby, a game loved by millions, has seen its fair share of ups and downs. But if there's one man who single-handedly changed Springbok Rugby, it would be Rassie Erasmus. From his early life in dispatch to his rise as one of rugby's greatest coaches, Rassie's story is nothing short of remarkable. This is the tale of how one man brought an entire nation back to rugby glory. Born in 1972 as Johan Erasmus, but more commonly known as Rassie. He grew up in Dispatch, a small town in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. It was here, on the dusty fields and among the rugged terrain, that young Rassie first fell in love with rugby. Growing up in a post-apartheid South Africa, rugby was more than just a sport. It was a way of life. And for Rassie, it quickly became an obsession. His talent was obvious from a young age, and he soon found himself playing high levels of rugby. By the mid-90s, Erasmus had earned his place in the Free State squad, where his versatility combined with his sharp rugby mind made him a standout player. Before long, he was wearing the green and gold of the Springboks. Between 1997 and 2001, Rassie earned 36 caps for South Africa, quickly establishing himself as a regular in Nick Mallett's trend-setting Springboks team. And while he wasn't the most physically dominant back rower, his rugby genius and preparation set him apart from the field. Did you know he was so well prepared that he would travel with both a computer and a printer to games for analysis? He even captained the Springboks against the Wallabies in 1999 for one test, later hanging up his boots from professional rugby in 2003. Shortly after, he started his coaching career in 2004, coaching the Free State Vodacom Cup team. The next year, he steered the senior team to a Currie Cup title. This is where his coaching innovation started. He would watch the games from the roof of the Free State Stadium and would communicate to players using coloured paddles and lights. Fast forward to the 2010s, South African rugby found itself in a dark place. After the highs of winning the Rugby World Cup in 2007, the Springboks entered a period of inconsistency and uncertainty. The infamous Brighton Miracle in 2015, when Japan stunned the world by defeating South Africa in their World Cup opener, was a symbol of how far the mighty had fallen. The Boks had lost their edge, their identity, and perhaps worst of all, their fear factor. They were struggling to keep up with the Wallabies and All Blacks. From 2014 to 2017, South African rugby was plagued by coaching changes, poor performances, and internal struggles. The national team was in disarray and fans were losing hope. Entering the 2019 World Cup cycle, South Africa was ranked as low as 7th in the world. For a country with such a proud rugby tradition, this was nothing short of a crisis. But just when the Springboks needed a saviour, Rassie Erasmus returned to the scene. Not as a player this time, but as the man tasked with leading South African rugby out of the wilderness. In 2017, Erasmus took over as Director of Rugby of the Springboks and then head coach in 2018. He wasted no time making his mark. Rassie's coaching philosophy was built on 3 pillars: tactical brilliance, brutal honesty, and a deep understanding of the psychology of his players. He didn't just want to win matches, he wanted to rebuild the soul of South African rugby. And he had a plan. The first step: restoring belief. He knew that South Africa needed to find its identity again, an identity built on physicality, smart rugby, and a fierce pride in the jersey. He wasn't afraid to shake things up, and one of his first bold moves was appointing Siya Kolisi as the Springboks captain. Kolisi was a fantastic rugby player and a fearless captain, leading the Stormers in Super Rugby. He became the Springboks' first ever black captain in their 126-year history. South Africa rugby legend Brian Habana said that it was a monumental moment for South African rugby. And that it certainly was, many would say it is still the best decision of Erasmus's coaching career. Under Kolisi's leadership, the Springboks began to believe in themselves again. His calm presence and unshakable resolve helped to unify a team that had been struggling for years. Kolisi wasn't just a figurehead, he was the heartbeat of this new Springbok side. But Rassie knew that leadership alone wasn't enough. The Springboks needed to tighten up their game, especially on defense. And for that, he turned to an old friend, Jock Nienaber, who had previously worked with him at the Free State Cheetahs. He would become his right-hand man and lieutenant. Nienaber's specialty? Defense. He built a system that was as brutal as it was effective, turning the Springboks into a defensive wall that opponents struggled to break through. Under Nienaber's guidance, South Africa's defence became one of the most feared in world rugby. Every tackle was a statement, every turnover a momentum shift. It wasn't pretty rugby, but it was ruthlessly efficient. Together, Rassie and Nienaber created a team that combined Kolisi's leadership with tactical innovation and defensive discipline. They weren't just building a team, they were creating a machine. And then, of course, there was the bomb squad, rugby's version of sending in the cavalry. Rassie's idea was simple, but devastatingly effective. Instead of just using substitutions to replace tired legs, Rassie created a bench stacked with powerful forwards who could come on and absolutely demolish the opposition in the second half. The bench would be a 6-2 split, 6 forwards and only 2 backs. This allowed the Springbok forwards to maintain a higher level of physicality from the start, knowing they would not have to play the full 80 minutes. The bomb squad became a game changer for the Springboks, and it played a huge role in their resurgence. Suddenly, teams were dreading the 60-minute mark because they knew what was coming. A fresh wave of giant Springbok forwards ready to turn the game on its head. The Springboks even used a 7-1 split against the All Blacks in 2023, resulting in a triumphant 35-7 win. By the time the 2019 Rugby World Cup rolled around, Rassie had transformed the Springboks into a strong team. They were still underdogs, but now had a chance of success. After finishing second in their pool, they went on to beat Japan and narrowly defeat Wales 1916 in the semi-final. Next was the final against England. Rassie's tactics were on full display. The Springboks dominated the set pieces, overpowered the English forwards, and controlled the game from start to finish. When the final whistle blew, South Africa had won 32-12, claiming their 3rd Rugby World Cup title. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. The Springboks were back, and they were back with a vengeance. After the triumph in 2019, Rassie didn't just fade into the background. He continued to play a pivotal role in South African rugby, transitioning to the role of Director of Rugby. And with Jock Nienaber stepping up as head coach, the Springboks didn't miss a beat. Together, Rassie and Jock maintained a strong partnership. Under their guidance, the Springboks continued to evolve, integrating new talent and adapting their tactics to stay ahead of the competition, such as playing a B team in friendly matches to improve squad depth and improve the development of emerging players. Then came 2023. Could Rassie lead the Springboks to yet another World Cup triumph? The pressure was immense, but so was the belief in the squad. And once again, South Africa delivered, beating the All Blacks 12-11 in a nail-biter of a final. They clinched their 4th Rugby World Cup title, cementing their status as one of rugby's all-time great teams. Rassie had created a dynasty. So, what is the legacy of Rassie Erasmus? He didn't just rebuild a team, he revived the pride, passion and belief in South African rugby. Rassie's vision turned the Springboks from a broken squad into world champions. They brought unity to a divided nation, proving that rugby is more than just a game in South Africa. It's a symbol of hope and possibility. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Rassie Erasmus and the Springboks, hit that like button and subscribe for more rugby stories. And remember, whether it's the bomb squad or a last-minute try with Rassie and the Boks, there's always something spectacular on the horizon.